Welcome to Keep Trucking Personal, where we invite you to explore the heart and soul of our company, Kivi Brothers Trucking. Through engaging storytelling, insightful market updates, and vibrant energy, our podcast reflects our culture, values, and achievements. Whether you're a team member or industry enthusiast, join us to build connections, foster growth, and inspire excellence. Discover why we're more than just a company. We're a community, a catalyst for positive change, and a home for those aspiring to be part of something extraordinary. The pre-trip is complete and engines ready. We're set to hit the road on the Keep Trucking Personal podcast. Let's go.
Welcome to Keep Trucking Personal. My name is Tyler Kivi, and I'm your host. Today's guest is someone that I've known for a really long time, someone that the company has known for a really long time, my brother, Dakota Kivi. Dakota, welcome.
Thank you.
This is a first for me on the podcast of doing it in person. So I wanted to make sure and in touch that it's exciting. The podcast is continuing to evolve. And now, instead of doing it over the air, which makes sense for our drivers, right? Because they're trucking, we're doing it in person. And I'm excited for this. Dakota's down in Kentucky this week. He brought himself, his wife, and his kids. And we've been having a blast this week. So even more excited to get into this conversation. But thank you for being here and excited to hear about your story. Why don't you dive into it and just tell us how you got into trucking? I think I have my own perception of it, but it's always interesting to hear it from you, the person itself.
Started at a young age, my whole family, our whole family has been involved in trucking. Dad, uncles, brothers, everybody. So everything's been based around trucking. And that really took off is when I don't really remember, you guys got to truck more with Pops, whereas I was too young the only thing I remember about trucking with Pops is the cheetah pillow he had behind the seat. But I also slept most of the time. That's why I remember the cheetah pillow, because I would pull that out and sleep on it. So I was a lot younger when he was still driving. So that's the thing I remember there. And my big trucking experience started with our Uncle Randy. When we were younger, we would go with him for a weekend out logging. So we'd go up. Most kids want to go to the water park or something. I loved the chance to be able to go with my uncle, where we'd have a cooler full of sandwiches, and all we'd do is truck, load logs, unload them. We'd sleep at the landing, so here we're sleeping both in his bunk. So that really started it even further. And then any chance I could get, I would go hauling with Derek when I was middle school, elementary school, even, I believe. In high school, even any chance I could get it, whether it was after school, Derek would be hauling after hours. I would jump in the rig with him. We'd haul all night. Then I'd come back and go to school in the morning. We did that. I would go on the weekends with him a lot. And then as I got older too, then I started going with Tyler, hauling pipe and spending as much time, and pretty much everything I could ever do was involved in trucking. I was in sports in up until 9th grade, and that was just because I didn't have a license at that point. But as soon as I had my license, any minute I could have was involved in the trucking.
Well, I think yours and Derek's story, it was very similar, like committed to the job, and you weren't even old enough to be in the job, but you were there and working through it. And it's funny. I think for both you and Derek, we don't give enough credit to back in the early phases of driving, how much time you guys put in. And Derek obviously was the catalyst to that. He would work a full work week and truck all the time, and he was committed. But we don't realize how much that afforded us the opportunity to learn and to get those behind the wheel experience, or even sitting on that cheetah pillow and getting a nap in when you need it. But it's interesting to look back and see you got your taste out there with Derek. It's very similar to mine. That's how I got my license. Derek is like, time to chalk it up. You're getting out there and rolling. So when you were with Randy, or your summer weekend, your summer weeks logging, or with Derek, even after work or on the weekends? Did you just crave it? Do you feel like it was in your blood, or?
I couldn't wait for the next time to get on the truck. I remember talking and Derek would call, and it was exciting whenever I knew it was coming. I'd have my little bag packed, whatever it was, my little Walmart plastic bag with some drinks, a couple sandwiches my mom would make. And I would jump at any opportunity I could get. It was literally, that's all, nothing else. I would put everything else away, especially I didn't have a cell phone then too. So it was just, oh, he's going on the truck, I'm coming with. Can I go, Mom? And she got nervous a lot of times because I had school the next day a lot of times, and I'm trucking late, and I'm still looking for some back pay from Derek, because I think sometimes I tried to stay awake every second I could because I didn't want to fall asleep. So there's times I'm chicken pecking in the passenger seat and I'm like, I got to wake up. So I'd open the window, put my head out the window, whatever it takes so I could stay awake just as long to just watch. And I love, especially taking off in a semi and coming to a stop, just feeling the power of the engine and the Jake brake. It's addicting when you can feel it and you're in the front seat, So it's, once it gets in your blood, it's an itch that you can't really satisfy.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you think of, you get out there, you get a little taste of it, and then all of a sudden you probably go back and try to actually quantify it. You've got more miles before you're even 18 logged than, many people nowadays trying to get their license are tiptoeing in it and may, have to go to a school and this and that. And like I said, the opportunity to be able to sit in that passenger seat and get all that windshield time really gears you up, especially for your future, right? And in point in case, you learned a lot from those experiences. So I think let's move forward into, you got all that hands-on experience, you got your taste of trucking, now you're familiar with it, it's in the family, everybody's doing it. When you get ready to get your license, how did all that work out?
So really, obviously, any opportunity I could, also whenever we were at the shop, any opportunity I could, because I don't remember how old I was, but 11, 12, 13, any opportunity I could just to drive a semi around the lot. It's like, oh, I would do it. Sometimes I felt like I was going to get in trouble because I'm out just driving semis around the lot, but I enjoyed doing it, shifting and trying. When you're always stuck in a lot, you can't wait to hit the open highway. It's something holding you back that you've always wanted. So as soon as I turned 18, I got my learner's permit, and then I would ride with Tyler, Derek, any opportunity to go pick up something. It's like, I want to drive, I'm coming with, you're sitting in the passenger seat, I'm driving. So that was, I drove as much as I could. And then it was right around towards the end of being 18 is when I went and took my road test. And I passed it on the first try. I remember the instructor, he was talking, he was amazed that the truck it was our first truck with disc brakes, which was beautiful for taking the test because you don't have to do anything with the brakes. But just going through the test, and I passed it with flying colors. I knew, I was looking around and I could tell he was very impressed. So as soon as I got done and passed, it was definitely one of the best moments. So as soon as we got back, then it was any opportunity I could to get out on the road, I took it, because I've been held back for how long, sitting in the yard doing 15, 20 miles an hour, which is probably too fast for the yard, but obviously I tested the envelope in the yard. So once I got the opportunity to go out on the road, I took any chance I could. The one unfortunate part is when you're under 21, you can't leave the state line. So I was still bound by a yard per se, but I took any opportunity I could to get out on that highway. And
one of my things that I remember often from when you first got your license was, at that point in time, was your girlfriend, maybe fiance, and obviously now your wife, but you had your hands full because she was in St. Cloud, right? Near St. Cloud.
Yep.
And he obviously was working out of Duluth. So for him to make sure he had quality time with her, plus Derek, who's always calling, like, we got to go. He had to put in that extra work to go to St. Cloud and back very often. That must have been pretty tough to keep up with because we were just getting into the heavy haul phase. I feel like we had a heavy haul, but we didn't really have momentum to grow it. And right when you were getting into it is kind of what helped propel that, obviously, and kind of help spell out your future and what you've done. But that challenge of making sure to maintain a relationship, as well as your passion for open road and wanting to put miles on and then haul the big stuff, pretty tough to manage, or what?
I'll tell you what, there was a lot of sleepless nights. I would work all day. Sometimes I would have to drive. I'd be doing driving, or I'd be working in the shop. Then as soon as 5 o'clock, I'm driving to St. Cloud from Duluth, which is 2.5 hours, just 2.5 hours there, and then it's 2.5 hours back. Well, a lot of times I'd only get 1 to 3 hours of quality time that I'd actually spend with my wife, which was my girlfriend at that time. And so I'd be on 1 or 2 hours of sleep, heading right back. I will admit there was one night I learned a lot from it. I started thinking a lot more and started doing a lot more, but I was on my way back, coming back up at 2 a.m. because I had to get back onto the truck to deliver a load by 7. So I'm racing to get back. Well, I woke up on I-35 with dirt flinging in my car down in the ditch a little bit. So I had to wake up, pull her back out. And I'm like, holy buckets, I really need to watch what I'm doing here, because this could get bad. So but it taught me a lot about dedication. And it's not always easy, but something you love, you got to put time into, and that was my girlfriend at the time and work. So I would do whatever I could to get time with both of those. And it takes a lot of dedication, and there's a lot of lack of sleep, I will say, but I think that also prepared me for, there's a lot of times, I put in a lot of time, and sometimes you can't always get the sleep you need, but the drive and the love for what you do keeps you going in those hard times to get through.
Well, that's, like I said, that's when you were in that phase of life, there was definitely a lot, and I questioned how easy it was to do. And like you said, that you had a passion and a commitment for both sides, work and family, that you were going to deliver on, and you did. And that stands out to me. That's something that I'll remember. I'm sure Haley, your wife, remembers, and you'll never forget that experience. And it really helps paint the picture of that now focused on sleep, right? So let's flip the switch on the other side of the coin. Early age, very young in relationship, however you want to look at it, you can do those extreme things. Now I'm on the other side of the coin, like, let's try to make sure I chalk up these 8 hours of sleep. Let's focus on that, because you need to be refreshed and prepared for the next day. Because even though now we're not driving, the decision making and the fast paced things that go into this career, you have to be prepared for. And it's so interesting. You got to see both sides of the pendulum, and now, you did what it took, and it worked out successful for you. So that's awesome. Okay. Well, let's talk about the heavy haul side, because like I said earlier, the heavy haul was a very small part of our business, and it had the opportunity to grow, but it took that person, like we've talked multiple times, that is accountable, that did the job well, that represented not only the company, but himself or herself very well. And you embodied that. And I think, without having like a way to say metric wise, I think that's what propelled our growth for heavy haul. It was you getting out there, you doing the job well, working with Derek hand in hand, being almost that disaster response speed. Like, this job just opened up, or this job just had a machine go down. What can we do? And you guys always being flexible and working through it helped it grow. How do you view that heavy haul kind of trajectory? Because, as we get farther in this conversation, I want to talk about moving into the office. But when you were trucking, how did that grow, and how fast did it take off?
I remember when I first started driving the heavy haul, like I said, we had a small base. It wasn't all the time, but where we got our niche is providing the service that customers need. Whether someone calls at 6 p.m. And I remember distinctly a customer called and needed a crane moved. And this is when I first had my license. My very first oversized move was an RT 530 crane, which isn't massive, but when you've only pulled the flatbed.
Well, what isn't massive? Tell us in weight. It might be
so the RT 530, without the spec sheet in front of me, I would say it's 60 to 70,000 pounds.
Yeah. So let's just look at that. Many people in their trucking career, if they haven't left the standard freight arena, they've maxed out at 48,000, maybe 50,000 if their equipment's proper. So now you've just got into trucking. you had obviously a lot of hands-on experience before. So when I say just got in, you weren't like fresh, but you go right into it and you do some flatbed stuff. But it was like your calling immediately was an RGN. Like, I don't know if you actually did much flatbed. I think you grew out of that almost immediately.
Pretty much. Like I said, I got my feet wet with some legal flatbed stuff. And then the opportunity came where we had to pull through for a customer. It was my first opportunity. I mean, I'll admit I was very nervous. I was very scared. I think that whole trip, my hands were sweating. I think I probably need to drink a gallon of water because I just lost white knuckling essentially because I'm just holding on. But the feeling of pulling through for a customer when the odds are completely against you, it wasn't, we didn't have a week to plan this. It's all of a sudden a phone call comes and all of a sudden, it's kind of like buck fever. My heart's going. It's like, holy buckets, it's going to happen. And that's where I made sure I focused, put everything that I knew up to that point into it, that I've learned from everybody I've watched. And as soon as I got there, and I offloaded the crane myself too. And that's, you guys, it was Tyler and Derek actually helped me load it and gave me a 5-minute crash course on how to operate it. Well, so here I get up there, not only, the heavy haul is a newer feeling and this big load. Now I got to offload the equipment, so it was pretty nerve wracking, but once you get it done, the checking those boxes, the feeling of accomplishment, and wanting to be able to contribute to what's going on, I checked those boxes, and that's where that feeling is what drives you, that hitting, making your goals, reaching those milestones. And once you taste it, you can't stop coming back for more. But
so do you think that first initial like service response, all of that kind of built into, like, from your perspective, okay, now I've got a taste of what I can do. Let's grow this. And that's kind of where the volume took off. Cause it, like I said, it went from very minimal, some cross-country runs to it was like people running around the clock on shifts and trucks to get freight moved.
Yeah. So it really set the tone of how I wanted to operate, that pulling through that the last minute emergency. It really set the tone as to what really I thought that was about, because that was my first experience. And so that's what I shaped the heavy haul industry about. So I'm like, it's going to be hands-on. It's hard work. It's late nights, early mornings. But that's what I built the experience around. So I embodied that. And that's where I'm like, we got to be there for the customers, because anybody can, I guess not anybody, but if you get a month to plan this move and you can make all these plans, that makes it a lot easier. But when you really got to dive in and take the bull by the horns and make it happen, it's like, holy buckets. So I embodied that into the whole experience. And as I started getting opportunities with customers, I made sure to never fail. And a lot of times there were times where I didn't have a driver available. So I'm out in the truck making sure that piece of equipment is on the site by 7, whenever it is they need it. And also too, one thing that I enjoyed is driving at night, because you got the chicken lights going, and you got beacons going. So people look at you and they're like, holy crap, what did you feel like, a fire truck or a policeman kind of coming down the road? But you're truly making a difference also in the community, because if that piece of equipment doesn't get to the site, whether it's a hospital, it could be a grocery store, the job might not be able to work the next day if you don't pull through. So it's bigger than the company and also oneself. It's more, there's the community involved. There's a lot of aspects in it. And if you miss that little piece, you may be the one that holds it up. And if you mess something up, you don't want your name to be remembered as, oh yeah, they were late or they were this. I need to pull through. So, and that's where that level of service and being hands-on, and that's
where it all started, is back when that little taste. Well, and that's something that integrity side of do what you say what you're going to do, like however you want to frame that. Like that's the definition there. And I think that for us, we've said that several times, and it's not always a sales pitch. Sometimes it comes off like, hey, like when I guarantee you that it's going to happen, it'll happen. And obviously that's a strong commitment, but it comes with the backing. To your point, you've been there and delivered that freight, and it's not always the best situation for us because there's plenty of things to do. You've done it. I've done it. Derek to this day even is still like, if I have to get in the truck because we're either busy or something fell apart that the customer couldn't control, that's something that we've focused on. And that feeling of when you show up and they're like, okay, so I was talking to you on the computer or on the phone and you're the one delivering it. And you're like, well, yeah, like it's what had to happen. And that's, I know for a fact that commitment from amongst us and our family is what helped us grow tremendously. Because if we didn't have that type of commitment, or the commitment that it takes, like you said, 7 p.m. on a Friday night when everybody's got something going on and you're there making sure that the truck is ready to go and the load is ready to leave, it takes a lot. And it's interesting to think that it starts at the very beginning when you get the taste of trucking to know what the service takes, what it takes to do it. But your journey doesn't just end there. You've done heavy haul. Then we talked about what did you say, 68,000 or 60 some thousand pound crane. So that's just I don't want to say standard RGM, but that's a little bit more of the status quo. And then you didn't just say, okay, I'm done there and going in the office. You started to get bigger and a little bit bigger and then a little more bigger. When you start to grow the size of your load, how did that change your typical thought of getting something done? And then what else did it take to make that happen? Like escorts and permitting, like how deep did all that start to go? And you're still in the truck at this point.
Yeah. So a lot of it, once you start hauling those big loads, you want to grow it. You want to haul bigger, which, and I know that can get some people in trouble, but I'm like, I want to haul the biggest load out there, which by all means, there's a lot bigger loads than we've ever hauled out there on the highway. But I wanted to keep growing the opportunity. You see the huge trucks and trailers going down the highway, and it's like, I want to get to where I'm pulling we're pulling those big trailers, Yes, we have this medium or smaller size heavy haul going. I want people to see our trucks going down the highway with those big trailers, big loads, being like, I want to be like that company. I want to drive for them. It turns heads. And that's when you're driving those big loads, you obviously got to keep focused on the highway, but people are they're rubbernecking, they're turning their heads, they're checking you out, and but you have to stay focused on the highway. But that's where you just know, and it takes a special person. Like some of the stuff you got to do in those trucks, a right-hand turn. I remember so many right-hand turns. You're thinking through your head, how am I going to make this turn? Which lane do I got to be in? Is there going to be a car trying to come around me? And you get I myself would get like another sense of buck fever for the turns, because you get one shot at making this turn. And if you don't make this turn right, you just blocked an intersection. You probably are going to need people to help back you out. And it does happen in trucking and whatever, but I took pride in what I do, and that would embarrass me, if I had to back out of a turn. So it's like, I get one opportunity to hit this, and I better make sure that
and that's that delivering excellence kind of mindset. And that's for any driver out there doing this big work. You have to have that, like, I'm going to deliver and I'm going to do it right. And you're always hyper focused on what's the next turn. It's that distilled view. It's not, okay, I'm going 1,200 miles with a 250,000 pound gross weight vehicle. No, I have to make it from here to here today. And that means I need to make this many turns. And that means I need to hit this truck stop. And it's such a trip planning concept, and being diligent on knowing experience does benefit you here. You don't have to have all the experience. It does benefit you understanding that, like you said, this turn, typically in a truck, you can make and stay in your lane, but I'm going to actually take the whole highway on the other side of it because I need all of that for my trailer and the load width, and start throwing in some height, which you've dealt with. And now all of a sudden you're like, there's a bunch of decisions that have to be made just to make one turn.
Yeah. And that's where, doing that, I wanted to get bigger, and it's just hard to not keep wanting to grow. And when we get a bigger trailer too, well, I realized at that point that it isn't for fun or it isn't for show. At the end of the day, if the price of the equipment and what you're paying, you have to bring in the money in order to pay for it. So yeah, I kind of put out my dreams and ambitions. Well, now we get the big trailer. Well, now I have to show up and make sure that this trailer is busy and hauling the big stuff. So throughout the time of the customer service and staying on them and pulling through continually brought more opportunities. So that way, when we had these big trailers, now I'm starting to get the work and now I'm learning. And a lot of it, to be honest, was I did as much research as I could, utilizing, Derek, you, Tyler, our uncles, but also the internet obviously was getting more and more resourceful. So, and I called a lot of the permit offices. I had such a love for learning. I would call the permit offices and I would figure out these things that are, there's not many good guidelines, but I would figure out these hard things. And I learned there's quite a bit that I learned through my own channels, just researching and doing it. And some of it was going out on a whim. Some of it was, taking a risk to a certain degree with certain customers on loads that I don't necessarily have the experience with or our company had the experience with. So the best I could do was take the experiences I had, all the people I learned from, and I had to go out, research. And with that, I made the best judgment I could make. And lo and behold, there definitely was probably some luck in there too, because there's a lot of bids where you kind of got to take that original leap of faith to put that price out there. And some of them are big numbers, but also you can easily lose out if you miss one little facet. You need this, or, you need a police escort here. You ended up higher than you anticipated, and now you need a bucket. The costs get astronomical. On
Not
that
only
side
does the
of
weight
things.
get big, the cost gets big.
So that's where it's taken so much.
So it's like the bigger you get, the finer the details need to be managed, which is something that sometimes you don't, I mean, it makes sense, but sometimes as you're out there driving, you see that thing going on the road, you don't realize that 1 inch, and let's even go smaller, a 1/4 inch can make the difference of this route is practical or this route is going to take an extra week because you're over height.
Exactly. Yeah. If you underestimate it, all of a sudden now you're like, son of a gun. Now we're not going to make any money on this. And that there definitely has been runs where we didn't make money. We pretty much broke even, but I made sure that I had to learn from those experiences. The ones that you don't make money on, that's where you have to make a note. I love learning and I love trucking. So anything that I would learn or take, I wasn't a great note taker. Some I am working on still to this day, getting better at. But my brain was like a sponge because of how much I loved it. A lot of these items just stick in my brain, and especially if you do get burned, you remember those ones a lot easier.
Right. So I think, speaking of your brain, when we moved into the office then, right? So then you evolved and continue to evolve. And Derek at that point said, okay, now we've got enough business that I can't do this alone. I need your help. And you came into the office. Obviously, like anyone, it's a different feeling. You're used to the 2 a.m, go. And it changes its pace a little bit. Not that it's any less important, but it's just a different pace. But there's a thing that I remember, especially when you got into permitting, that I still can't even do with my own personal credit card, but you had the ability to memorize all of the numbers that were pertinent for your job. And that was simple as not just one credit card, but multiple credit cards. You could read off the full digits on the front, the expiration date, and the security code with no guidance. For me right now, even I'm like, I buy something on my phone, I'm like, oh, what's my security code? I got to pull this thing out of my wallet and go. And I'm like, I've had this card for years. Is that something you think is a special skill that helped you? And maybe I want to ask you this question. Do you still remember credit cards like straight out right now?
Oh yeah. I still have my credit card memorized. I think it is a special trait. And I'm not big on, I like to stay humble, but what it did is it gave me a different level of efficiency. I realized I couldn't get done what I needed to in a day. So it's like, all right, if I memorize this credit card, instead of pulling it out of my pocket, slowly entering, I can enter it in about 3 seconds. Well, that saved me time, same with driver's phone numbers. Instead of finding a driver's phone number in my contacts, I figured out it was quicker for me to dial the driver's phone number and call it. So there's still a lot of driver's phone numbers that I have memorized, even customers' numbers, drivers' numbers, family. And also, I also did that too, because I'm like, what if you lose your phone or something and you got to hit a payphone? A lot of people nowadays don't remember phone numbers, where I'm like, I have a Rolodex in my head. I can call just about anybody. It was all about efficiency.
It's funny because obviously our parents might say, well, we had to do that because we didn't have caller ID or we had a cell phone or didn't have a cell phone. But yeah, there's definitely something special when it comes to that. Because from my perspective, like there's a need to know a lot of things. And I'm like, it's short term. It's washed out after I enter that thing in. It's gone. That's an amazing skill. And I think that's, like you said, looking at it from an efficiency standpoint is something that many people don't do. They're not sitting there measuring, like, if I can just dial this number, I can be faster if I know the cards. So you're in the office now, the pace has changed. You have this amazing skill to remember everything that's thrown in front of you. What was all of that experience like? And at this point, you're working under Derek, right? You're working, or maybe alongside of Derek, helping him through his guidance of like, okay, we got to call this person or this or that. How was that experience?
It was great. I got an opportunity to grow, and I've always been hands-on, in the shop working or driving. So it was a change of pace to step into the office, but I did enjoy that. You are just as important, obviously everybody's important in the whole organization, but I felt like I'm actually guiding the ship more. I'm leading the way in a lot of areas, and that I felt more important, but I didn't take it lightly also, because it was, I'm 19, 20 years old, and there's a lot of typically older people that I was working with. Well, everybody was older than I was. So the hardest, it was nerve-wracking to build up the confidence and also the respect. But the one thing that I had is I learned from everybody above me, uncles, family, Tyler, Derek. So I had a lot of experience, but I also had been there and done quite a bit myself in the truck, in the shop. So having those experiences really helped me be able to build the respect. And I think that was the biggest thing that I had to earn and really push, was to get the respect of everybody, especially when we were growing. So Derek was working on his own thing. You were also in the office working on your own thing, and I'm trying to pioneer the heavy haul side. Well, it was hard, and we're trying to learn and grow. Well, I would try to sometimes I would go to Derek for help, but he's too busy that he won't have the time to help me, So sometimes I was on my own figuring out to make sure that I'm making the best decision. And that's, I didn't take it lightly. Like, there's a lot of weight on my shoulders. I got to make sure I'm thinking this through, but also, the guys on the other end, their livelihood depends on me. The drivers, their families depend on me. So I understood that it was very serious, and that it was no joke. And I couldn't I couldn't act like it was light, because there's a lot of people dependent on me. And so that I really understood, and I made sure to put forth all the effort I possibly could to make sure everything went. And there definitely is failures along the way. And I think the biggest thing is learning from those failures, try to not make that mistake again. And it was very fun, because there was a lot of learning. There's a lot of different aspects, leadership, things that I had never even fathomed or even realized were a thing, and at that young of an age, not many people truly get an opportunity like that. Mm-hmm. And although it wasn't handed to me, and, in my opinion, it was earned, I still didn't take it lightly. And it was, I had to perform in order to
be in that role.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting, the young side of this. So that's a topic that I still bump up against to this day, is you feel out of place sometimes when you're the younger generation in a workforce that's much older. And especially when I started driving, same for you, I'd come up to a job site, and, at that point I was 18, right? I just got my license. I can only stay in the state And I get to this job site, and I'm sure without a doubt, I probably looked like I was still in high school. Like most likely they were like, this guy is not old enough to drive a truck, call the cops to get him out of here. But that was a hurdle that was always a challenge for me to overcome, is feeling that you're not fit compared to what these other coworkers or industry folks are. And so, yeah, I can see from your perspective that it's very hard to go from all of these phases into the heavy haul and coming into the office and starting to manage people. And then, like you said, respect is the most important thing. And it helps being relatable when you can say that I've been on that trailer, I pulled that trailer, I can help walk you through loading a crane. And you did the same thing that they had to do. You called resources and leveraged whoever you knew, or sometimes self-taught, whether it was through the internet or just sat in the thing and started it and pushed levers till it moved. But you really start to understand that what it takes to work in this industry and the respect that the drivers need. Because when you were in a truck, you demanded that same respect, whether you were 18, 25 or 35 or even 65. It's still the same fundamental feeling. You want to be treated like a human. You want to be respected for what you're doing, and you want someone to speak to you honestly. And I think, and not speak down. And I think that's sometimes hard, because you can speak down to someone even though you're speaking politely. And so you bring that conversation into, I'm a good person. I want to do right for you, because you're driven, as we've learned, right? You're very driven to do well and satisfy the customer. And that breeds, and that continues to grow. And pretty soon your team is like, we're here to win. And you start to pull off the sometimes impossible. And I think you've probably got a whole list of those Friday nights where you and your team are like, this has got to be done by Monday. And this may seem impossible, but we have the guys to do it and the team in the building. And you start to put your heads down and plug through it. It's a different feeling to get that accomplishment and be young still. And some people, they probably even say it to you still, like, oh, you're the youngest one in this room right now.
Oh, I still get it all the time. And I remember back to one time I had to go get a crane, which, mind you, it was not a small crane. I think it was 110,000 pounds. Well, I'm 19 or 20 years old at the time. And I remember Derek got a phone call from the customer. He's like, are you sure this guy's old enough to drive? But he was confident, because he's like, man, that guy, he knew exactly what he was doing. He had his chains out. He had it loaded within, it was a big crane. I had it loaded within 30 minutes and pulling out of there. And he's like, man, that guy is good, but are you sure he's old enough to drive? And yeah, so I got a kick out of that. And that's, and that's where understanding that I had a knack, and I put in the time and the effort to gain some of these skills, and I'll never stop honing them throughout my life, because you can never be good enough, and you got to continually try to learn. But working with those people and pulling in, like you said, you have older people and they're always questioning, like, do you know what you're doing? And having the confidence to be like, yep, nope, I want the machine right here. And they're, no, we always do it this way. Well, I want it this way, so, and people want to push their way in. There's times that I've learned where it's like, okay, we'll do it that way. That's fine. Sometimes you got to be humble, but sometimes there's a lot of money and liability on it. And if you don't stand up and have a backbone for, this guy wants to do it this way, and he breaks your trailer, you may be out of a trailer now because you didn't stop him. So you got to be able to stand up to people when you think and know you're right, for your own safety and your own livelihood, because otherwise they could take it from you. So knowing your place and knowing your time and what you got to do, that's the hardest part. But respect has been one of the biggest things that I value, because there's a lot of people that didn't have to give me respect, but they saw through the hard work and everything I put into it, that I wasn't just here to try to tell people what to do, or you go sit over there, you do this. I truly cared, and we all were a big team, when the machines are delivered and at the end of the week and it's like, go home, that was a heck of a week. The feeling of that success, I knew the teammates, the drivers, everybody involved felt that, and I did too. And it was a lot of hard work, but you go home and you can hang your head, you can put your head on the pillow and go to bed and feel accomplished and respected. And, it's a great feeling. And having that team effort, it doesn't just come on its own. It has to be driven. It has to be mutual in order to be a successful organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All of that plays into everything we've talked about. It's this journey keeps building, right? So then we get to this spot and you keep growing, and pretty soon you're managing all of heavy haul, right? And then you're moving through the paces there, and it doesn't stop there. Now your roles even changed again. And with the skills and the skill set that you have built over the time, now you're in charge of all of our freight business development and looking at the whole company through a different lens versus a specific division being heavy haul. Now you're saying, I have the ability to take and mold what this was doing. I'm gonna take that, what I learned, and I'm gonna spread it amongst the whole company. And so now we've taken all of that and spread it out. Everybody's gonna feel a little bit of it. Your role has changed where you're not staring down the lens of heavy haul all day, and now you're looking at whether it's our flatbed, whether it's van, it could be end dump, it could be heavy haul, it could be intermodal. Like, you are ready to touch any division, no matter what it is. So now, how has that pace changed again? You went from the high pressure of and you're still very involved. I don't want to discredit, but you've set up people to be prepared underneath you, beside you, to do all the jobs. How does it feel now being a little bit different of a pace?
It truly, I still have just that drive where it's like, if I could sit in the office for 20 hours a day and work 20 hours a day, I totally would. And there are some days that I do put close to that.
We'll make sure Haley hears this with asterisks, like, but if I could, obviously, and that's the reasons I can't is my family, because I love them. But just, I love learning, and this gives me a new opportunity on learning and growing things. And like I said, being part of something is huge. And I realize I've got a lot of weight on my shoulders. There's a lot of people relying on me. And that's where failure is not an option. Like, delivery is the only way forward. And that's where putting the time in, and don't get me wrong, there's times when it's like, son of a gun, I wish I could just go home. But those are very far and few in between. It's typically something, I got to give it to family, but it's always, oh man, here's an opportunity. Oh, I'm going to jump into this. Oh, we got to, I'm thinking to myself, oh, I'm tired. I didn't get much sleep last night. But then the phone rings and someone, on the other end, and it's like, oh God, it gets me going, gets the blood pumping, and off to the races as I go in this direction, and when you dive into it that deep and the love for it, you kind of forget about all the, when you're tired, it really blocks that out. And I think of everybody that relies on what we do, and it's what really pulls me through. There's an energy,
just amazing that
there's an energy that comes from that commitment. And I think it's hard to tap into unless you've been in it. And for me, for example, the way I feel some mornings, and this just happened a week ago, I told Caitlin when I was driving to work, I said, I had so much energy, and like, I was almost a little worried that I was I like to say jazzed up, ready to get to work. Cause I was like, it's time. And I got all these ideas, and that sometimes that's my own pitfall, is too many ideas. But I get going, and like you said, you might have heard something, saw something on the news or any of that, and all of a sudden it spurs off an idea, and you're like, okay, let's try to put this in. Or even the other side of the coin, you just know you have a pile of work to get done. There's a lot on your plate, and it's like building that mindset, like, okay, get ready. It's like you're getting ready to start the race, get ready. And then you sit down and it's like, let's go, let's pile it up. And I think if somebody listening hasn't experienced that, I don't have the best advice how to get into it, but when you do find something you're passionate about or energizes you and gets you motivated, it truly does replace caffeine kind of mindset. Like, it's there. It's
for sure. Yeah. And in a lot of it too, you're really onto something. If some of my best ideas, some of the times that I get the most clear thinking, whatever, is before I'm going to bed, which usually also is why I do lose some sleep, because I can't shut my mind off because I'm thinking about this permit or this truck or this load or this customer or this lane. And I'm like, what can I do? Well, sometimes you get the idea and it's like, I don't want to go to bed. I got to write this idea down or I'm going to forget it. And there are times when I've gone to bed and wake up and it's like, what the heck was I thinking of? Because I forgot it from sleeping. And it's like, I'm mad at myself because it's like, what was it?
That was a good idea.
And sometimes you wake up in the morning. Sometimes you wake up early before your alarm and you're just sitting there and all of a sudden you're like, I'm on to something, And it's like, I want to get up out of bed. I'm running to work and now I can dive into whatever it is, and that's where when you have a true love for something, in my opinion, ideas come from all kinds of places. You don't just have to be at work. And that's where like work to me really isn't work. It's what I do for fun.
Yeah.
It's one thing I've got to learn more hobbies, but I got my hobby, it's trucking. Like I just want to get out there and improve anywhere I can on and this company also. And that's why this new opportunity is so huge, because there is a lot of influence I have, and I don't take that lightly, that I've got to make sure that I'm the guiding light and I'm heading towards the right shore, the right harbor.
It's a different viewpoint, because some of the stuff you're working on before was how do you solve the problem right now.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the stuff you're working on now is how do you solve the problem in a year? How do you solve this opportunity? How do you create this opportunity in 2 years? It doesn't matter how whoever challenges you with what the challenge is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit longer of a turn. And when you get on the front of the ship, or when you're making a lot of big decisions, people often forget that, as the higher you get, the ship turns a little bit slower, it feels like. And
Right.
it's micro decisions. You have a macro view of the whole company, what's going on, but it's those micro decisions that improve and get better over and over. And some of the fundamentals being customer service, making sure you call that driver back, making sure that driver is understood and heard, or if they're concerned about the way to load it, that we
Right.
guide them and we make sure that they're set up for success, because those are the little things over and over and over that you have to do day in and day out to be successful and to create change, to better create opportunities for everyone. Like it just keeps piling up, and we're definitely excited. I'm excited. I know the skill set you have is something that I do not have, and that's why this is such an important role. What do you think, like, about our culture? Like I know from how you work, I know how from Derek works, I know from many people how driven and motivated they are. What does it feel like to be surrounded by people that are that committed to getting the job done?
It's very awesome. It's like you see the love for it, and it's the compassion. It's when I'm down, you're gonna lift me up, and vice versa. If someone's struggling over here, we're gonna help out. If hey, and it doesn't even have to just be work. And that's what one of my biggest focuses right now is yes, I do want to make everybody a better person at work, but I'm focused on if I can make people better in their day-to-day life at home, everything. If some of these skills are replicable in your day-to-day life, and we can improve that, that's where I want to go, because that goes way farther than just work. And that's what I want to replace the word work with: fun. I come to work and I'm like a pig in mud. The more work I got, and I don't even know how to explain
it's just
it.
Opportunity. It feels so good to have opportunity,
and that's the biggest thing too. When you have an opportunity, you have to grasp it. If you're always scared and you never take that leap of faith, you'll never know what was. But not being afraid of failure, and that's the biggest thing.
Well, I think your growth demonstrates that you went very fast up through every rank we have, and you weren't afraid to stretch. Some people like to call it stretch that. Like, I've never done this, but I will learn. I'm not afraid to learn. And there's so many great attributes that you've talked about, throughout this whole conversation, and how much you can do if you're determined, and having a passion and love, can carry you to that next day, can carry you to that next week, carry that next month. It's just exciting to hear it, and to know that you've, influenced so much of the decision making we do. If you have some advice for any driver, whether it's if they want to get in a heavy haul or just want to be the best driver they can be, what would it be?
The best advice, I think one of the most important things, and I'm learning even more as I've gone through these, and now more so in this position, especially like as you said, a lot of it's not like the here and now, it's future and forward thinking, but is make a plan. Make a plan on what you want to get. And it seems, and sometimes this is where I brush it off because it seems kind of silly, but make a plan. Jot down the steps, the boxes you got to check. That's where in trucking it's so important, is your route planning. What is my goal for today? How far am I going to get down the highway? Where do I plan on stopping? If you don't make a plan on where you want to stop for the day, you might stop 5 times in a day. Well, that just costs you a lot of time. And your plan doesn't always go to plan. You have to be able to, have some backup plans, some plan B, plan C. Sometimes you get to plan Z, and that's the beauty of making a plan, is it doesn't have to go to plan, but you work through it and don't ever stop until you get to the end. Sometimes you fail, then you just adjust your plan and you keep going, because if you're determined and you stick with that, you're going to get to your end goal. You're going to make it where you want to, and setting a high goal. You might not always get to your goal, but it's going to keep you pushing. And the next time you will get better. And
it's the journey.
Mm-hmm. That's the big and the glory of it, and never stop learning too. If you stop learning, that's when I think the day you die is if you stop learning, because new things are discovered every day and new ways to do things. And if you really don't open up your mind and brain to new things, you get old, you get tired, it drags on, it gets boring. And that's what keeps the drive going, in my opinion, is whatever you do, that plan is going to keep you moving forward. Whether you fail at this point, keep on trucking.
There you go. Keep trucking personal and keep on trucking. Mm-hmm. Today has been a good conversation. There's so much to keep unpacking, and I know I could continue going on. And I know you have big goals and big dreams and big plans for the company. So I'm excited to see you put all that together. I want to say thank you for taking the time to get on the podcast. I'm excited that you're here. It's going to be fun to talk to you, and whether it's 2 weeks, a month, a year, whenever we get you back on, to kind of go through and hear some of how you checked your boxes and what you've done. So thanks for being here. Make sure to spread that love between work and family.
Oh, I will. No, this was actually a lot of fun. And this is the first time I've ever done this. So once again, it's stepping outside the comfort zone. And I thank you very much for having me, because I've enjoyed this as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in to Keep Trucking Personal. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, share, and comment. We'd love to hear your feedback and suggestions for any future topics or boxes you want to check. Feel free to reach out to us at podcast@kivibros.com. Until next time, happy trucking.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Keep Trucking Personal. We appreciate you taking the time to explore the heart and soul of Kivi Brothers Trucking with us. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review to let us know your thoughts. Tune in next time as we continue our journey together, diving deeper into what makes us a community, a catalyst for positive change, and a home for those who aspire to be part of something truly extraordinary. Until then, keep trucking, and we'll catch you on the next episode.